Welcome to Sports in the 607, where we talk games people play. Here's your host, Bob Michaels.
Well, we bid you hello once more, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Sports in the 607. Today, we're honored to have a gentleman that I've known, and I was thinking about this before we actually sat down to do the interview. It's been close to 45 years that Bob Streeten and I have kind of interacted. He came to the Corning School District back in 1981, as my memory hopefully serves me correct. And since those days, we've interacted both on the field, off the field, traveling on buses, hitting the underside of bridges and things of that nature. Fortunately, that was only one time. But Bob, let's get the formalities out of the way. Welcome, and thanks for joining us. I'm looking forward to this interview.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Well, as I said, 1981, your arrival in Corning, and prior to that, you were an athlete in the Syracuse area at Nottingham High School. Take us back to those days. Was lacrosse always the sport that ultimately you felt that would pretty much define your reputation?
Well, to be totally honest with you, I was my next door neighbor, man who was a year older than myself, and his name's Clem Murray. He became a professional photographer for newspaper sports events and things. Gave me my first wooden stick. Started with a wooden stick, and that was very interesting compared to what we deal with today, stick wise. But I my first love until I really got into lacrosse was football, and was fortunate enough to play both at Hobart College, and enjoyed very much being involved in both sports. Today, lacrosse is sort of year round, even at the college level. They have fall ball and all that kind of stuff. But I think guys that play football still play football, to be honest with you. And just went through our high school season. Our high school team was a combined team, Nottingham High School, Corcoran High School, and Henniger High School. Okay. And it was tough getting, basically, not that I've ever been told I'm not a good recruiter, but I had to recruit a lot of kids to play so we could have a team. And I think we had 7 or 8 kids from Nottingham, and we practiced at Corcoran High School, so we had to get on a bus, drive to, they would drive us to Corcoran and then take us back home to Nottingham. And the Henniger kids were also there. And a few years, I'm going to say after I had finished playing, a man named Tom Acey, who was a great coach, football, and he started coaching lacrosse at Henniger. So they had their own team. So that sort of pulled apart, what we had, although I was already gone. I was already off to Hobart at that point in time. But they ended up winning a state championship. And when we get to the West Genesee segment of this, I'll explain some of that too. But it was a wonderful journey, and I enjoyed it very much. And certainly, coaching. I started out coaching JV lacrosse at Nottingham, again the combined team, and then eventually they branched out, and I had an opportunity to go and coach with Mike Masser at West Genesee High School. Which was already, very decorated. They hadn't won any state championships, but at that point they didn't even have state championships yet. So, West Genesee was beating pretty much everybody almost all the time. So, they're starting to get back to where they were. After Coach Masser left, things changed quite a bit, obviously. He ran the program.
You're getting just a little bit ahead of me where I wanted to lead you.
Sorry.
I want to go back to Hobart for a moment, where you played, and who would have known the connection that Bob Streeten would have with the Corning School District, other than maybe Jimmy D'Arcangelo, who played at Towson. Talk about that national championship game and high scoring affair, and what's the best memory that came out of that for you?
Well, I want to be totally up front. Even though I was in high school, I was a high school All-American. And once I got to Hobart, I realized that I was swimming in the deep end, if you know what I'm saying. I did get to
Yes.
start one game in 4 years, but we were pummeling so many Division III teams at that time, Hobart was, that I would say I roughly played in at least 40% of all the games we played. And
Okay.
it was a great experience and winning two national championships, last one of which was at home. You can imagine the party we had after that at Hobart. But anyway, it was certainly a great experience. And football wasn't as successful, although we had winning seasons. We didn't make the playoffs. We couldn't beat that darn Ithaca team. It was always fun to play them in lacrosse because we beat them always in lacrosse. But
Sure.
anyway, it was it was a great experience, and it was only an hour away from Corning. And my parents were able to come to the games. They actually came from Syracuse, and it was sort of like a wonderful home spot in so many ways. And it was a
Well, hold
psychology
on to
major.
that thought, Bob,
Yeah,
because when we come back, we're going to talk about moving forward and all of that. But right now,
okay,
this is where we stop for a moment just to pay the rent right here on
got it.
Sports in the 607. Sports in the 607 is presented in part by Empire Sports of the Southern Tier. Well, if you just joined us, we're talking with a legendary lacrosse coach in Corning, and Bob Streeten sharing some memories from coming up through the ranks of all of that. So you graduate high school, you go off to play football and lacrosse at Hobart, and then you get, shall we say, coaching assignments at Nottingham. But you talk
Yep.
about, and you and I have talked about this many times, but what was that experience like for you to coach alongside Mike Messier at West Genesee?
It was incredible, incredible. Just you're standing on the same sideline with the guy who is probably the most successful high school lacrosse coach in New York State history, with state championships and all that kind of stuff. I learned so many things from Coach Masser. I think one of the biggest things that I learned was if you don't have discipline, you don't have a team. And I can tell you, Mike was the ultimate disciplinarian, and people that were doing things they weren't supposed to do on and off the field were very verboten, shall we say. Uh, but he instructed and taught. Even these are kids that had come up through the program, and back in the day, uh, Mike had a program where he had youth kids playing box lacrosse. He had high school kids playing box lacrosse. He had a league for us adults. He had a high school league, and he had a over 30 league. So pretty much everything that Mike did when I got an opportunity to get the job at Corning East High School, I came down expecting to just replicate what Mike had already done. Joe Corcoran had such a wonderful, successful program. What I didn't realize was it was when I came here that there was absolutely no youth lacrosse at that point in time. I'm going to say probably 4 or 5 years after I started coaching, a guy named Bob Pavlik started his own travel team, which became the youth program. And they did very well. And it was great for, he was one that was friends with the parents. So recruiting these kids to play lacrosse. And they had kids from East and West on those Skyhawk teams, and they did very well. And that really sort of fed the program until I was able to get my programs set up in terms of setting up box lacrosse, setting up lacrosse camps, all this kind of stuff. And one of the things, the first year I got there, I looked at what I had. I had a good group of seniors, and behind that wasn't a lot. I mean, we had a full JV team. There was no modified at that point in time. Um, and the JV team was run by Chuck Lindsay, and they were usually quite successful. I didn't take the absolute best sophomores all the time, but as I got into it, I realized as Terry Corcoran told me many times when he would give me a phone call because he had a vested interest in his father's, program continuing. Um, he told me, he said, Bob, he said, we've had freshmen and sophomores starting and being all league at Corning East back in the day. And that was not the way it was run at West Genesee at all.
Yeah, yeah.
You pretty much had to be at least a junior before you started. Occasionally, they had some superstars that were sophomores that started, and he's put so many kids into the Hall of Fame and also World USA Lacrosse, Brad Kotz, and many others. Um, and part of the thing was that he created a program, which is what I tried to exemplify, where I'm gonna do box lacrosse because it's much easier. Because in lacrosse, if you're trying to teach kids lacrosse in a field environment and somebody misses a pass, they may have to run 30 yards to go get the ball back and keep the drill going, if you know what I'm saying. But in the box, the ball bounces off the wall, and so you're always in play. And it's a great, there's a reason the Canadians are as good as they are in lacrosse, especially box lacrosse, because that's their national pastime. And anyway, so I began right that first summer I was there. The Corcorans helped me a little bit, but I had to basically sort of reach out. And once people knew that you could come to the rink and learn how to play lacrosse, I would loan sticks, get them back, of course, and trying to encourage these kids to get involved. And I have a funny story. A young man who lived literally a block away from the rink rode his bicycle by, and this is in the middle of my youth session, and I jumped up out of the rink and said, "Hey, you want to play some lacrosse?" He says, "Oh no, I don't play lacrosse. I just play football." And I said, "Okay." So sure enough, 15 minutes later, guess who rides his bike by? Now I jump out, go and stop his bike and say, "I got a stick for you. I got a helmet. I got gloves and arm pads. Come on down and play lacrosse." And he ended up going to Syracuse and had himself a career, and certainly very proud of that sort of thing. But we saw many kids down at the rink and getting their first tutelage, and it wasn't until Tim Rowe came along, and he sort of was the precursor with Bob Pavlik of the Skyhawks and starting this youth program. And it was nice too because of the fact that they got kids from East and West involved. And
Hey Bob, we're going to step aside for a moment. My producer says we need to take care of some business, so we'll do
got it.
that. And we're talking lacrosse with Bob Streeten, but there's another sport that will kind of wiggle its way into our
Right,
conversation this morning,
right.
and we'll be back with that shortly. Sports in the 607, presented by First Heritage Federal Credit Union. Well, there's no doubt the name Streeton and Lacrosse are synonymous in the Corning School District and in the Southern Tier, maybe all through New York State and beyond. And we'll be getting to that very shortly here. Bob Streeton, who came to Corning in 1981, helped to take over after Joe Corcoran's run as far as lacrosse is concerned. And then, Bob, you dabbled a little bit into a sport that you knew quite a bit about, having played at high school and at
Yep.
the collegiate level. Let's talk about taking over a program at Corning East in football that had some down years, and you got to the point where you surrounded yourself with some talented people, including Randy Holden, who worked alongside you not only in lacrosse but also in football. What about those days in the formulation of East High football?
Well, so when I came uh, in '81, I signed on to be the head JV football coach. Lou Fiorillo was my assistant, still a very good friend. I played football at West, but didn't play, college football. Actually, I think he might have played a year or so. Um, and we had a great time doing JV football. And circumstances changed after I think I did it for 2 years. And then in the third year, um, Bill Walker resigned, and so they hired me. And the program hadn't been terribly successful. We ended up lucking out having a kid named Brian LeBaron, who ended up playing linebacker at Syracuse back in the day. Tony Pavlik, who ended up playing Division One lacrosse at Loyola. No football there, but we had some wonderful kids, and they really helped the football program grow. We had a varsity team. The last year that I coached, we had not done well at all against Arnie Northrup. He was one hell of a coach, and I'll tell you, beating West, even at the JV level, was always hard. Um, so when I became varsity coach, one year we didn't win a game. Did not win a game. We had 7 starters get hurt and miss the entire season. My first year when we went over, and fortunately, we had some people that still wanted to play football the next year. And I think we were 5-4 that year, and I think the next year we were like 6-3. The best part about the last year that I coached, we beat West for the first time in 9 years. So that was, sort of a feather in the football program's camp, shall we say, because we just, we had the talent, we just couldn't consistently put it together. And you covered all the games, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. And
Yeah, and so you put after football was behind you as a head coach, you were able to concentrate solely on the lacrosse program. And for fans who may not be familiar with lacrosse in Corning, especially at Corning East, Bob, you had an unprecedented run in terms of getting to state finals. And one thing that you can say, and it's one of the many feathers I think that's in your hat. And before we go to break, I want to talk a little bit about that 1990 season where you went to states and came away with your only state championship. And what was the feeling like for you, just as not only as a fan of lacrosse, but as a lacrosse coach, and to be able to get to that level and bring home the top prize?
well, it was outstanding, and the core of those guys that did as well as they did. We talk about Casey Donegan, we talk about Todd Cavallero, we talk about Dom DiNardo, we talk about John Hall, Doug Altensbergers, uh, and others. Even one of our, pretty much everybody that played on that team went on to play college ball. Some played at lower level D3 schools, but it was a great experience for those kids. And I purposely we had lost to Yorktown the year before in the state championship,
Mm-hmm.
and so I purposely put them on the schedule. So we drive all the way to Yorktown on a school bus, and it was a grass field, and it was a monsoon. And then after that, we had, and this was nice of the Yorktown people, parents. They put on gave us food, and we had a chance for the kids to mix. Little did we know that Casey Donegan and Dom Finn, and also Roy Colsey, who were on Yorktown, were going to be teammates at Syracuse.
Right.
And that's the way lacrosse goes. You never know who's going to be your teammate down the road. But uh, getting our butts kicked in that sloppy rainy day. I think
Yeah.
we lost 7 or 8 goals at least. And, going to the state championship, and now we're playing Yorktown. And the one thing that wasn't a huge factor in our loss, um, it was so muddy, and our faceoff guy, Todd Cavallero, probably weighed about 155 to 100, maybe 155, 60, something like that. Now we're on turf, and it's not raining. And he had quick hands, and he was just he crushed it on the face-off. And it was a huge part of our game. Dom DiNardo, we were playing at Hofstra, where he ended up playing college ball, scored 7 goals in that game. Casey Donegan lit it up too, and our goalie Danny Burnside was just outstanding. I think he had close to 20
Yes.
saves in the game. He was
Yeah.
just and as I now know, since I'm friends with the coaches from Yorktown, uh, they became aware after the fact that their guys may not have been tucked in tight and deep like we were. They drove down the same day. We stayed overnight in a hotel, but so certainly their guys were not at the top of their game, and they had some awesome players for sure. But
I want to
revenge is
talk about
a good
I want
thing.
to talk about some numbers and
Yeah,
signs and things of that nature.
yeah.
We will do that when we come back. This is
Okay.
Sports in the 607. Sports in the 607, brought to you by On a Roll, Hanover Square Horseheads. Bob Streeton's never been a man who is afraid to drop names, but for very obvious reasons. Casey Donegan, Todd Cavallero, Danny Burnside, Dom DiNardo. And I want to talk about that 1990 run to the state championship and numbers that figured into the realm. 13th of June, I believe a 13-7 final was the score. We
Yes,
rode
sir.
a bus we rode a bus down that was a charter bus, and it was the
Yeah.
number 13 bus in a fleet of 13. Um, I don't know if you play. I don't know if you play the lottery, Bob Streeton, but my goodness, I would think 13 would be a number that would be a common denominator for you. But um,
Yeah,
what what a year that was, and what a season it turned out to be.
it was, and one of the funniest little traditions that started then is after kids got back, they shaved their heads. Some of them did. Some of them did, and that sort of became a
Yeah,
little bit of a tradition. But it was, they would shave them the night before the state championship game. We went 13 times in 26 years, and
and the Mohawk, right?
yep, and the mohawk, and some which probably can't be described properly in this kind of a venue. But it was, and the thing that I mean, when they took their helmets off, they looked really strange, and not everybody shaved their heads. But the reality is, it was a real sort of joint team effort in terms of being together, and I think that that's one of the things that I will always remember. That group really, there were very few egos. Every now and then a parent might get involved. How come my son's not getting to shoot more? And well, partially because he's not a great shooter, and if he does shoot, he just doesn't make goals. But I think parents, at least back then, were, since I was sort of the new guy and everything, and we knew we had a really good team. Uh, Very few interventions with parents, complaining about playing time and things like that, because our top 10 were outstanding. And
Hmm.
yes, with the majority of them went to play Division 1 at different schools. And so, there was a lot of talent on that team for sure. And
Well, there are, I think, in excess of over 100 players who went on to get scholarships to play
yep,
college lacrosse, and certainly
yep,
that is something that you have to be very proud of. And so, essentially, 3 decades, over 3 decades of coaching at Corning East. You had a couple of years as the head coach for the Corning Hawks program, and then I don't know if it came as a surprise for you, but there was another venture that was calling Bob Streeton, and kind of a family affair with your sons David Streeton and Duncan Streeton being involved in all of that. I want Bob to share those memories when we come back, because it's something that is still ongoing as far as sports in the Southern Tier, and especially with lacrosse. And we'll be back in just one moment. Sports in the 607 is brought to you by Solutions Federal Credit Union. When we last spoke with Bob Streeton, we alluded to travels by this gentleman after coaching at the high school level. Bob, you've been very active with a program that you initiated called Gaffers Lacrosse, Gaffer Elite, and all of that. And somewhere in between, if you would share very briefly, you actually had an opportunity to make an international call in terms of lacrosse worldwide. You went to Uganda in Africa to
Yes.
spread the word of lacrosse. How did that come about, and have there been some long term um,
Yes.
relationships that have been
Yes.
established?
Yes. So we were sponsoring a girl, Patricia, from Uganda, sending money to, help her being able to go to college and that sort of thing. And Suzanne and I got together and said, let's go see Patricia in Uganda. So I
Your
said,
wife,
well, I know
Suzanne.
lacrosse. Yeah, Suzanne. And I said, let's go. I got a old suitcase that I knew I didn't need to bring back home from Uganda, filled it up with lacrosse sticks and short sticks, obviously, and took that to Uganda. And I had met some of the guys from Uganda. We actually went out to California and watched the World Games, and got a chance to meet Patrick, who was what a stud. Oh my gosh, just incredible athlete. Uh, and he was sort of the leader of the Ugandan team. We watched them play, and I when we went to Uganda, I actually did a clinic for some of the youth kids, and nothing warms the cockles of my heart, but to see kids who don't even have shoes with this used lacrosse stick running through mud puddles to pick up ground balls and playing lacrosse, just giggling and having just a wonderful time. It was just wonderful to try to promote the sport in that area. And they still, as far as I know, they still have a team. In fact, their captain Patrick that I was talking about actually called me about 4 months ago just to chat and see how I was doing and that sort of thing. And just it was a great experience. They weren't the best lacrosse team at the World Games by any means, but they had some very good athletes that could have played for a lot of D1 schools, not like 15, but 4 or 5.
Yeah, yeah,
But,
yeah. So
the education, yeah,
stateside, the Gaffer program uh,
yes.
evolved here, especially in the Southern Tier. And instead of just drawing upon one particular high school, you have young men and young women who come from an assortment of high schools in the Southern Tier in Section 4 and some in Section 5. What's the status of Gaffer lacrosse nowadays?
Well, we're fall is always a difficult time for us because football is our biggest competitor, and kids want to play high school football. And back in the day when football wasn't as strong as it is in Corning right now, kids would, you know, they would finish their Friday night game, hop in the car on Saturday, and drive to a tournament. Because the reality, I don't know about now, but the reality then was we weren't sending very many kids to college for football. Lacrosse, yes, we were sending lots.
Yes,
And
yes,
so
yes.
there was a real, trail to follow there. And things have changed dramatically in the whole recruiting process. Back in the day, I can remember when Greg Raymond and Steve Valone were playing for me back in the day at Corning, and I looked up in the stands, I saw Coach Desco from Syracuse and Coach Petramala from Hopkins sitting side by
Right.
side, scouting the same guys to recruit them. And in those days, we were sending 5 or 6 kids at least, maybe sometimes 7 to D1 programs, and having some great success. Steve Valone had a great career at Syracuse. Greg Raymond was the only 3-time captain Johns Hopkins has ever had in its lacrosse history, and was just an outstanding defender. Um, so we had a lot of success, and the kids could see what was going on. And when we would have a lacrosse camp for the young kids, I would always show them the 1990 highlight tape with the music
Right.
and all that stuff, and would point out that's Casey Donegan went to Syracuse, that's Todd Cavallero, he went to Johns Hopkins, that's Greg Raymond, he went to Johns Hopkins. You get the idea. Steve Valone, all those guys, and we just had some great fortunate opportunities for these kids to really play a lot of lacrosse, and that's one of the things changed a bit. I mean, I spent for 20 plus years, I spent my entire summer at the ice skating rink doing box lacrosse leagues and all that kind of stuff. And so the kids got a chance to play a lot of lacrosse. And one of my core beliefs as a coach is that, if your friends and I are down playing lacrosse and you're not there, what's up? You still want to
Yeah.
play lacrosse? Because,
Well, Bob,
most
you've carried the label of old school, and I think that's a compliment for what it means because um, my association as a broadcaster and a friend secondary to you
right.
was that you were a person and to this day that demands excellence and dedication, and I think that is a good core success or a core recipe for success in any particular endeavor that people get involved with. But maybe just a final thought, and we could go on for hours, and I want to offer this opportunity that we'll come back and revisit and talk a little bit more in detail. But what would you tell aspiring young men, young women who want to embrace the sport of lacrosse, the best pursuit for that?
In lacrosse, unlike football, similar to basketball, you as an individual, if you have a wall, a stick, and a ball, you can make yourself into an excellent lacrosse player. You don't have to be the fastest boy or girl, but you have to be dedicated to having that stick work. Because if you can't catch the ball, you really aren't going to be on the field very often. And so that's one of the key things that I would harp on over and over again. If you're not hitting wall ball and all that kind of stuff, uh, your skills are going to diminish, not improve. And I can remember we lost the state championship. I lived across the street from Casey Donegan. The morning after we lost the state championship, I'm getting ready to go to church. He's walking down the roadway to go over to East High with a lacrosse ball and stick to do some shooting.
Well, Bob Streeten, you have been very generous with your time and sharing the memories and all of that, and I thank you so much. Very pleased to be able to call you my friend. I wish you continued success with the Gaffer program, and any of you young men, young women out there that are looking for, um, shall we say, a road to take, a journey to further your ability and your education as well. Lax is a pretty good place to be.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely, it is. Yes.
Bob, thanks again and being our guest here.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us for Sports in the 607. We'll have another segment coming soon.